Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the BOLD program info session. My name is Yushan from Yayasan PETRONAS, and on behalf of the team, I'd like to first of all thank all of you for joining this info session on a Wednesday night. In the next hour or so, we'll learn more about Yayasan PETRONAS' upcoming program called Bridging the Online Learning Divide, or BOLD for short. And more specifically, we'll delve a little deeper into how each of us can get involved and make a direct impact in the life of a child. Before I hand the time over to my colleagues to walk us through the session today, I'd like to remind you that we've allocated quite a bit of time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to post them in the live chat, and we will try our very best to answer your questions either directly in the chat or during the Q&A session later. All right, in order to not take up any more time, I'd like to hand the mic over to Puan Nelly Francis, the CEO of Yayasan PETRONAS, to kickstart the session. Puan Nelly, over to you.
Thank you, Yushan. Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and salam sejahtera to everyone who's here. I guess it is not too late for me to wish everyone a very happy new year. And thank you for taking the time to join us in this session this evening. I'm here to help all of you who are curious and would like to know more about this meaningful volunteer opportunity. If you have already registered as a volunteer, we'd like to thank you for that. If you haven't, I really hope at the end of this info session, we will be able to encourage you to do so. So we are Yayasan PETRONAS, the CSR arm of PETRONAS. Our mission is to enrich lives for a sustainable future. And at Yayasan PETRONAS, we aim to deliver sustainable impact, improving the quality of life and socio-economic outcomes for communities across the nation through three focus areas, namely education, community well-being and development, as well as environment. So now you must be wondering why both, okay? As members of societies, we need to act urgently and collectively to address the long-term negative effects of COVID-19 on education. As you would have already been aware, schools have been closed for several months, 12 months practically, with limited or no access to learning for children who are without devices or internet connection. Based on the studies by UNESCO and United Nations, as many as 80% of children who lack access to primary school education and are falling behind with basic literacy prerequisites are those from the B40 households, okay, the underprivileged children. 3 out of 5 children are at risk of not being able to keep up with school because of missing out on basic literacy education. During the 12 months when schools were closed because of COVID-19 pandemic, students participated in online learning for the duration of those months. All right. So with BOLD, our goals is to tackle the massive learning loss that is happening among the B40 communities, the kids from the B40 communities. And Sentuhan Ilmu, bridging the online learning program that we have here, will provide 2,000 underprivileged students with internet-enabled digital devices to engage in remote or hybrid learning and assist these students with immediate learning support. This contribution from Yayasan PETRONAS will enable high-need students to participate in learning, catch up with their peers, and address the learning losses caused by COVID-19 for a Malaysia where all students have equitable access to education. The program, BOLD, is also directly meant to support teachers' efforts in addressing the learning gap and aims to increase the rate of literacy among these underprivileged students. To share a little bit about BOLD program overview, what it is. Okay, again, bridging the online learning divide. BOLD, which is a program under Yayasan PETRONAS Sentuhan Ilmu, under our education pillar, provides children in underprivileged communities with internet-enabled devices, digital modules, and a one-to-one tutor support to access comprehensive literacy intervention through WhatsApp using the provided literacy modules. Okay, the BOLD program provides this comprehensive support to address students' learning loss, where these students will be provided with, again, as I mentioned earlier, internet-enabled devices. And with that, 1,600 volunteer tutors, and that is where all of you comes in, are needed to provide online learning support through WhatsApp. Okay, while the learning support for the remaining students will be provided directly by parents using Google Classroom. Our implementation partner, MyReaders, for this learning support program will provide effective learning and teaching materials, as well as training for volunteer tutors, which will be done through the tutor support program coordinators that's going to be assigned to each volunteer. All right. The target outcomes for both is that we want to create a collective effort that is set to create high social impact. Okay, this is to enable high-need students to address their learning loss and help them pursue long-term quality learning. And this is done through increasing their reading proficiency, increasing their interest in STEM and scientific thinking skills, as this is one of the goals for Yayasan PETRONAS in contributing towards the 60-40 national STEM enrollment. In closing, we strongly believe intervention and support such as BOLD program could help narrow the learning gap among the underprivileged students. The BOLD program allows us to play our part in bridging this growing gap with one word at a time. It is going to be a meaningful volunteering experience, and I truly do hope that it will bring you joy and meaning just as it would for the students. Please do share this with your friends and family, because every bit of help is crucial at this point. Let us all come forward to help give the gift of literacy. You can make a difference. All right. Thank you so much. And this is when I'm going to pass the session to Rachel from MyReaders to cover a lot more about what the program is going to entail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Panelli. So thank you for that lovely introduction to the program as a whole. So today we will cover the following items as mentioned by my colleague Yushin just now. For any questions that you might have, please drop it in the chat and we'll respond to them at the end. So a little bit about who we are as MyReaders. So we are a nonprofit organization made up of a team of teachers and educators ourselves. Based on our first-hand experience with students in high-need schools, we design structured literacy toolkits and programs to enable children to read through one-on-one lessons. So over the years, we've worked with over 700 teachers, 30,000 students across the nation. In past programs using a similar online model to BOLD, students have shown significant growth of up to several years in reading proficiency. So our program is not just a volunteering program or one that just focuses on students learning English. Our mission at MyReaders is to empower communities through literacy, because literacy is the key to being independent and making informed choices. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to create a safe space for a child to learn a new language and build confidence and comfort as they do so. We want you to remember that at the heart of this program is really the learning journey of the child. Our team is excited to welcome and support you in the journey to ensure that every child in Malaysia will be able to read. So the bond that they will build with you is what determines their experience in the program. And so to do this well, here are some factors we consider when pairing students to volunteer tutors. Some of it are like their second language, their availability for classes, and someone who has teaching experience, for example, but it's not something that you have to have in order to succeed as a volunteer tutor. So as a volunteer tutor, you will be assigned to one child aged 7 to 9 to provide one-to-one support for 1.5 hours per week, delivered online through WhatsApp. So we have been running this WhatsApp model for 2 years now. And so there are reasons for this, and we'll maybe cover that in a bit. So to ensure that students receive uninterrupted support by a familiar tutor, we ask that volunteers commit to classes for a continuous period of 14 weeks, equivalent to half of the program, because it's that trust and emotional bond that they build with volunteer tutors that will motivate them to keep learning. Because let's face it, learning a new language can be intimidating and scary. We welcome volunteers who would like to continue reading with a child for the entire duration of the program, which is 28 weeks. And we have a number who have signed up to do so. So more specifically, this is what a class session would look like. Your student will have access to all the learning modules and materials on their tablet. They will be assigned to go through specific videos and pages from their modules, independent pre-work during the week. So for your tutoring session, you will be provided a lesson guide, including all the relevant videos and materials for each week. You even will be able to see stuff that they do independently at home. In your resource pack, it will be packed in a resource pack on Google Drive. For the first part of the session, you will prompt your students to read a text that they have read during the week. And then the second part, you will feedback and correction. In the second part, you will give them instructions to complete a STEM worksheet activity and discuss a set of questions with them to stimulate their thinking. So at the end of the 1.5-hour sessions weekly, you will fill in a simple Google form about which pages and activities that you've completed that day, and if there was any issues that you faced. So all of this will be explained in greater detail when you attend the volunteer tutor training. So this is an example of a WhatsApp-based lesson. As we watch this video, you'll notice that the volunteer tutor will share videos, images, texts, and voice notes to prompt students and provide them feedback for correction. Once again, all the videos, images, and texts will be provided in your resource pack.
The first thing she sent was the first part of the page, which is the phonics sound. So she sent the picture, the video. This is the picture. All of this will be in your resource folder. And the video.
Oh. 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 Oh.
Okay, and then she also sent a simple instruction to follow. Can you please repeat this for us? And then the student will send a voice note.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
The first thing she sent was the...
So that's just a sneak peek into what the class looks like on WhatsApp. And the reason why we chose it is because it consumes very little data compared to platforms like Google Meet, like Zoom, and it supports voice notes, so you can still read as if you're reading with your child. So all of that you saw just now will be packed in the resource folder. So don't worry about having to create all of that. Once you sign up as a volunteer tutor, we will provide you with support to ensure a smooth and positive learning journey for both you and your student. So first, you'll be given a self-paced online training module to be equipped with phonics knowledge and skills on how to teach your student using the MyReaders modules. This one will be sent to you once you are accepted as a volunteer. Then you will attend a small group tutorial session facilitated by MyReaders facilitators and current volunteer tutors to give you a chance to practice teaching in a safe space and ask any questions about the reading session. So in terms of ongoing program support, once classes begins, every volunteer tutor will be assigned to a program coordinator you can contact for support throughout your involvement as a volunteer tutor. The program coordinator will add you to a WhatsApp group alongside other volunteer tutors they oversee, and this will be your support group and learning network to share best practices and ask for any advice if necessary. So these are some best practices that are built into the program. For example, a reading session may be rescheduled if necessary to a suitable day, and all communications are done through a shared WhatsApp group. This is to protect the child and ensure child safety is complied with all the time. So this group consists of the coordinator, a student, their parents. So if they're using two different numbers, parents will also be in the group, and you as a volunteer tutor. So most of these practices will be managed by your program coordinator. So at the same time, to ensure students receive quality learning support, here is what you can expect to commit as a volunteer tutor. As a volunteer tutor, you will invest a total of 2.5 hours to participate in training modules at the onboarding phase. So on a weekly basis, you'll only require 1.5 hours per week to spend with your student for a total of 14 weeks. So as explained, the commitment before is attending these 3 sessions. So let's take a look at the broader timeline and requirements as a volunteer tutor. This is a timeline for volunteering. Do take note of key activities. The applications are open until the 31st of January. So we hope to receive your application after the info session today. You will receive an acceptance email once you are successful, and you will get details for the training, for the tutorials, and also the welcome event. By February, you will then be you will then be added to your WhatsApp groups alongside your students, and you will begin your classes. So it depends on, so we have 2 phases happening, and that's why there's a difference of February or March. For BOL to be successful, we're looking for volunteer tutors who meet these requirements. You may also refer to these requirements in more detail and indicate which ones you can meet in the form. So my colleagues will be dropping the links to the form in the chat for you to fill them up. We look for volunteer tutors who are proficient in English and are able to communicate either in BM or another first language of the student. We definitely look for people who are patient and able to work with children, and most importantly, people who have no criminal record, especially pertaining to the safety of children. As a final remark, before we go into Q&A, we'd like to share some genuine reflections from our current volunteer tutors after several months of volunteering. We'd like to share this testimony by Mahira, who spent a year reading with her student.
Hi, my name is Mahira, and I've been a volunteer with MyReaders for more than a year now, especially throughout the pandemic. One of the main things I enjoyed about this volunteering was the fact that it has been integrated, that we can do it at home via WhatsApp, since we couldn't do it in person anymore, which was sad. But the amazing team managed to make a structure and syllabus such that we can do it in the comforts of our own home. So this helped a lot, especially for the students who can't go to school throughout the pandemic, and allowed them this exposure to English. Even though it's 1 hour a week, it still helps so much for them, rather than no exposure or exercise or practice at all. So one thing I want to celebrate about my student is how confident she's become in her reading. She would still try to read, even if the words are new or it sounds a bit funny. She's developed a sense of curiosity to try, and even though it doesn't sound accurate or there are mistakes, it's okay. We will read it through together again, and that just increases her confidence day by day. So I hope that she'll continue reading more, and that this program continues so that we can help even more students to practice and improve their English literacy. Hi, my name is Mahira, and I've been a volunteer. Hi, my name is Mahira, and I've been a volunteer.
Sorry about that. So, just quickly. So our volunteers reflect that the experience is as meaningful in their lives as it is for their students, and they gain joy from seeing the impact on their students and watching them grow. So we know this, that by volunteering to teach these students, you will make a big difference for them. So at this point in the info session, we'd like to open for questions from the floor and especially from the chat.
Hi everyone. Thanks so much, Rachel, for the very informative info session. So we have a few questions here. I'm going to start with, okay, so this is regarding volunteer experience. So what if, I've never thought before and am not familiar with phonics?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, don't worry about it. If you have no teaching experience at all, that's completely fine. The program or the training is designed to support people with no experience in teaching at all. And many of our volunteers, our existing volunteers in different programs, have had no experience in teaching. And it's really easy to follow through the modules. We've designed it in a way that's friendly for people that don't require any teaching experience.
Okay, and the second question that we have is, how will signing up to Tutor make a real impact in the lives of students?
That's a good question. So the way we are running this program is it's an intervention program. So for students who were affected by learning loss, meaning they couldn't attend school in person or because schools were closed, but also students who had issues with online learning, what we're doing is reaching those learners that were affected by it. And this one-to-one format of these classes is unique because they don't get that in school. So right now what's happening is schools are opening again. Students are going into a classroom, but there's a whole classroom full of students of mixed ability, some who are perfectly at where they're supposed to be academically, but there are students who are left behind. So this you volunteering and you being part of reading with a child does make that difference because they get that tailored intervention specific to their needs.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Also, what if we face any issues while volunteering? Will there be any support provided to volunteers during the program?
Yes, definitely. So the way we've designed this is for coordinators, program coordinators, to support you throughout this journey. So coordinators are also trained, and they are most of the time usually people who have had volunteering experiences themselves. So they're really knowledgeable about how these classes work, and basically they're there to support you and mentor you just in case you need any sort of help, any sort of support, you have questions. But the other thing that we highlight, and the really good thing about this program, is also you have other volunteer tutors journeying alongside you. You'll be in a WhatsApp group with them. Should you have any questions, should you have any challenges that you face, we highly encourage you to use that WhatsApp group as a resource, because from our experience, we do provide volunteer tutors with training and resources, right? But they also contribute a lot to that learning. They contribute back by sharing some of the best practices that they've personally tried. And that's where that knowledge is collectively built throughout the program as well. But definitely for logistics, your program coordinator's role is to support you in that regard.
Okay, and now we have a couple of program structure related questions. So firstly, when will classes be held? And also, is there a fixed day and time that, you know, participants would need to be available for?
So we roughly mentioned these slots in the application form. We've identified weekends because we don't see that it's going to be possible to run weekday classes also with because a lot of our volunteers are working professionals or students, and similarly students go to school on weekdays. So we have put down weekends. We have schools in Kelantan and Johor as well. So their weekends are a little bit different. So we have considered Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you will be assigned a student that's according to your availability that you state in the form.
Okay, now we have a question from Mirza, and she's asking, are we expected to achieve a certain goal after every session, or is it okay to teach at a pace comfortable to the student?
That's a really good question. I really like that one. So, so what we always tell our volunteers is that, yes, you have a guide of what you can teach that day. And for BOLD, especially a bit more clearly spelled out, we have set lesson plans for each week that you read with the child. And we've designed this very intentionally. But the focus really is the pace of the student. If you find that the designed lesson for the day, your student cannot keep up with doing everything, then by all means, slow down the pace to suit the student if it takes them a bit longer to cover the content. So we really want to focus on the basics of reading, right? That's the whole point. So if they're taking a little bit time to master the phonics, if they're taking a little bit of time to recall the things that they're learning, it's okay to slow down the pace. The focus really is the learning journey of the child. Jane, you're muted.
Sorry, so keep your questions coming, guys. We have also, I think we've taken a few on ground as well already. In regards to signing up as a volunteer, like, is it open to Petronas staff or non-Petronas staff as well?
So do you want me to take that live?
Yeah, I think it would be good to also just quickly run through.
Okay, so we started opening applications to Petronas staff first. Yushan, do you want to chip in on in this answer?
Sure, yeah, I think the volunteer program is open to all. So Petronas staff, friends and family, general public. So if you are inclined to volunteer, we would highly recommend that you submit your application. We will, of course, review each application to ensure that we are really deploying and partnering students with volunteers who are eager to tutor students and have kind of the right skill set per se. But I think for now, it's really open to everyone. So if you are interested in the program, please just do apply.
So on that note, child safety is something that's really important to us. So for Petronas volunteers, Yayasan Petronas is vouching for them for this volunteering program. For people who sign up, for members of the public who sign up, we will be doing a background screening just to make sure that the safety of the child is prioritized, and we know for sure that we've vetted all our volunteers. So just a heads up on that as well. So we do have a larger proportion of Petronas volunteers. Don't let that stop you from applying.
Okay, we've also got one program structure related question from Emma. She's wondering whether the 1.5 hours per week is a one sitting session.
Yes, Emma, it is one sitting session. We've trialed it with students. So we've started WhatsApp classes for 2 years now. It's always 1.5 hours. It works. But that said, it's not necessarily true for all children. Why I can explain why we structured it at 1.5 hours, because if you think about it, it's 1.5 hours of like one-to-one tutoring for the entire week. For a child that grows up in a household that speaks and interacts in that language, if you compare this child to that child, it's a huge gap. So that's the reason why we've put it at 1.5 hours. But let's say, Emma, you are the one reading with that child and you realize that this doesn't work. So we have factored in the volunteer tutor training, we do talk about breaks. If it's needed, give them a break. And we do have different sections happening. So water breaks, toilet breaks, or like just a game to change things up a little, go ahead. Yeah, just always think about, is my student doing okay? Do we need a break? Yeah, feel free to take them if you need them.
Okay, we have one question from Munira, and she's asking, how are the students selected?
So we are selecting students through schools. We will be working with teachers, with schools, to select students that fit into a specific profile from our rough. So a student that is between 7 to 9 years old, that's the target. So students in lower primary. And we are looking at students that may not have attended kindergarten, because in the past 2 years, if a student is year 1 in the past 2 years where they should have been attending kindergarten, they may not have attended it at all. Students who are reading behind their proficiency level, so we have a way to assess this, and students that are from B40 families. So these 3 main criteria we're looking at.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. I think this is all the questions that we have for now. Oh, okay. One just came in from Nurul. Will we be informed on our assigned child's literacy level at the beginning of the program and at the end, so we know how much the child has improved?
Yes, that's a really good question. Definitely. We will inform you of the child's literacy level at the beginning, just so that you know, or you have a rough estimate of what that looks like. I think we also make recordings available to you, because if we conduct the assessment over WhatsApp, there's an audio recording you can listen to roughly guess where your student is reading at, just so that you're a little bit more prepared for your first class with the student. And at the end of the program, when we run our assessments, we will make it a point to share the results with you as well, just to celebrate as well your journey with the student throughout the 28 or 14 weeks.
Okay. Okay, so we have a question coming in that just came in from Ajla as well. She's wondering whether the students are from primary or secondary schools, and how many weeks or hours we need to clock in total, and the learning method or curriculum is provided. And yeah, this is actually quite a few questions all in one, but I think a quick run through on just like an overall brief on the program would be good.
So yeah, the students are lower primary, so 7 to 9 years old, just primary. The target of this program is not secondary school learners, although at My Readers we also work with secondary school learners. There were a few more questions in there, Jayin.
Yeah. So the the learning method or curriculum, will it be provided? And also, will volunteers be provided with training beforehand?
Yes, so I'm guessing you might have missed the start of our info session earlier. You can always watch it, but for the benefit of those who just joined us as well, yes, you will be provided with the modules. You will have access to exactly what to teach that week. You have room for flexibility in the event you want to modify some of the activities, but there will be a guide, a step-by-step guide, specifically catered to understanding that most of our volunteer tutors that are going to join us have no teaching experience. So we have factored that in the lessons and the lesson content itself. But beyond that, we do have training provided to you. It'll be a 1.5-hour self-paced training where you will get to go through a lot of like the science of reading. How do you run an effective icebreaker with a student, and also the pedagogy. You will also be exposed to the curriculum, where do you find things, and all of that. So it's a really comprehensive training. And the best part about the training is you will get to take breaks as you need them as well. So we do mention in the videos, if you need a break, you can go and take it. So our videos are cut up into bite-sized pieces. So the 1.5 hours cumulative, but you can do it in several sittings. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So Mei Chang is also asking, if I become a volunteer, what should I do if the student refuses to participate or learn during the session?
Thank you. That's a really good question. So as we know, as we are adults and sometimes we have bad days too, and we have feelings and we have emotions. So if you are facing such a situation, you can alert your program coordinator, who will look more into it. So at the start of the program, one thing that we do is making sure that the parent and the child understands the structure of the program and is agreeable to participate in it. So it's an opt-in for the students. And if at all you face this situation, which you might, definitely you can end the class and inform your coordinator, and we'll look more into it. Maybe it's a conversation with the parent to understand the circumstance, and we'll deal with it accordingly.
Okay, the next question is from Juan Harris. He's wondering, since there are no physical session, so how do BOL accommodate for those with constraints to get, a laptop or like phone or even internet connection?
Yeah, thank you for that. So what we're doing is during the structure of the program is that the students will be provided with devices. So we did identify that as being one of the biggest gaps for learners with no digital devices at the moment. So through this program, they'll be provided with digital devices with data enabled. So assuming that they're not, that they live in areas with no internet infrastructure, that might be an issue, then they will not be using a volunteer model, because the volunteer model is for students that are able to access internet, and data will be provided alongside the devices. So the rest of the 400 learners, actually 600 learners, they will be learning using a different model, not with volunteer tutors.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And also, I think this is a question that I think many people would want to know. What if they can't commit to, the 14 weeks, for instance? What if they're only able to commit for maybe a month or two and something pops up in the middle of the program?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that's one we get all the time as well. Sometimes people approach us to want to read for a month or two with the student. And we used to do it in the past, but from our experience, we understand that for a child trying to build relationships with multiple different people during the entire program. So this is an 8-month program. So if you will volunteer for a month, that could mean that the child would have to interact with many different people throughout the entire journey. One of the biggest successes of this program is really just that consistent volunteer student pairing, because it takes time to understand your student, to break the ice, to get them comfortable, to make progress. So unfortunately, 14 weeks is really our minimum requirement. If you are unable to commit to that 14 weeks, unfortunately, you may not be a good fit for a volunteer tutor for this program, but that doesn't mean you cannot continue to support us by sharing this with friends and family who may be suitable or who may be able to commit that duration.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. And also one question regarding child safety. Are we allowed, are the tutors allowed to communicate with their, student outside of these volunteer hours?
That's also a really, really good question. So part of our process, once you are confirmed as a volunteer, you will receive an agreement from us spelling out the terms and conditions. And for child safety, we do not allow you to interact with the child outside of that WhatsApp group. So I mentioned just now that there'll be a WhatsApp group where you will be in it with the program coordinator, the parent, and the student, and all communications are supposed to just be on there. Even if the child chooses, let's say the child or the parent contacts you personally, you are to alert your program coordinator and then continue the communications in the group. So we take child safety very, very seriously. And as many of you may understand as well, if you have children or even if you have nephews and nieces, a child interacting with a stranger online and an adult specifically as also does pose a lot of risk to the child's safety. So we have to put these measures in place.
Okay, so we have one regarding volunteer experience from Malati, and she's asking, are secondary schools students allowed to volunteer?
The first thing she said was,
are secondary school students allowed to volunteer? That's interesting. We are keeping it to 18 years and above, but we are reviewing this because we've had several applications from secondary school students as well. Some of the things that we are putting in place is that making sure that volunteer tutors themselves are able to keep up with running these classes and committing to them. So yeah, for now, go ahead and send in your application and we will confirm if you're eligible to volunteer with us.
Okay, we have a very good question from Hazik as well. So he's asking, will volunteers be given allowance?
Thank you. So this is covered in our FAQ as well, and we do get this from some people. So no, in the structure of this program, we will not be affording any allowance to volunteer tutors. So it's not, you are not going to be expected to incur any expenses. Let me just go to that section here. Yeah, so you will not be paid during the program, but all volunteer bowl activities will be conducted virtually. We do not expect you to incur any significant expenses.
So in regards to also as a volunteer, would there be any other form of support given besides training?
Yeah, that's a really good one, Jayin. Thank you for bringing that one up. I'll just go to the slide. It helps visualize as I speak as well. So yeah, these are some forms of support provided to you during the whole journey. So starting with a training session, it's a self-paced 1.5-hour training that's really comprehensive, will equip you with the skills and also the mindset to be a successful volunteer tutor. Apart from that, you'll be joining a tutorial session where you meet an actual volunteer in the My Readers program, and they will be able to they will take you through some of the actual scenarios you may face with a student, and you will be interacting with them, asking them any sort of questions you might have before you actually start as a volunteer tutor. So that's the first step in the support given to you. But after that, as your classes start, so someone will be paired with you. That person is called your program coordinator. Their role is to monitor and support you throughout your journey. So they will be adding you to a WhatsApp group alongside other volunteer tutors. So should there be any questions you have to ask, you can ask your coordinator or other volunteers that are paired, that are in the same support group as you. And this program coordinator will be monitoring your classes. So just in case you need more support, you can always reach out for it and say, I'm not so sure about this part of my class. I don't know if I'm doing this right. That's perfectly fine. They will be able to support you with that. But beyond that, their role is really just to also observe all the classes and see if there are any issues that are being faced by any of the volunteer tutors that they support. That's the second one, and really strong one in the program. But apart from that, I think some people have asked about it as well. There will be resources given to you for the entire program. And the beauty about these resources is that they'll be constantly updated. So the curriculum is fixed. What you learn in the whole, what you have to teach the student will be set up front for the 28 weeks. But what we constantly update is best practices, ideas for brain breaks, icebreakers. That resource will be constantly updated in the resource folder that you will get. So these are like the support afforded to you as a volunteer tutor. So I want to add here that the beauty of being a volunteer tutor, of course, aside from journeying with a child, feeling that satisfaction of them improving in their literacy rates and their interest in STEM activity, in STEM skills specifically, I also want to say that it equips you as a person with all these skills to teach any child to read. If you're a parent, you can even try this with your own children. If you're an aunt or an uncle, if you have like younger siblings, like go ahead and try them with them. They will really work, and I think that's something that you can carry with you even beyond the duration of the program.
Thank you, Rachel. We've got a really good question from Ching Ching as well. She's asking what will happen. So once BOL ends, right? Once the BOL program ends, what's next for the child? Would they be still enrolled under My Reader's care for more literacy training?
So once BOL program ends, that officially ends your term as a volunteer with us. But you will still have access to other volunteering opportunities. So in the form, we do ask you to indicate if you would like to sign up for future volunteering opportunities with Yayasan PETRONAS or with My Readers. You can also opt for both. So we always have literacy programs running at My Readers, and we welcome you to be a volunteer for future programs too. Did I read that question right? Like the question is there not other opportunities outside of this? Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's right. Okay, and we have one more question from Vanessa, a very lovely question. She's asking, would we be able to continue teaching the same child even if we have passed the 14-week mark?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking it. Yes, we highly, if the whole duration of the program does suit your calendar, you would love to journey with the child for 8 months, we definitely welcome you to do so. It's really that consistent pairing with the child that really helps them, because if you think about it, learning a language that you're not good at is really scary. If you have to sit in a classroom where everyone is speaking in this language, you're not really sure how to, you cannot read what your teacher is asking you to read. It's a really intimidating experience. So having to then read to a stranger is scary. So what volunteers typically tell us is that in the first few weeks, students might be a bit shy, might be a bit quiet. When you ask them to read, it takes a little bit of prompting. So your child will not have to go through that 2 times. Once they build that relationship with you, they get to have you as their support for the entire 8 months. Like, definitely indicate that in the form.
Thanks, Rachel. So I guess one question that a lot of volunteers would also have in mind is that would their performance be monitored or be graded in any way?
So we don't have a grading system. We are not going to be marked a A volunteer, a B volunteer. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for the Asian in you. Sometimes you want to know, right? Am I an A volunteer? Am I an A+ volunteer? But you will have a tool to self-assess. You'll be able to look at a simple tool that we have just for you to assess and think about what are the areas that you might need support with. So this will help your coordinator. If you can reach out to your coordinator and say, I need more tips here, you know, I struggle with this part. So that will be helpful. So we don't grade you. We don't score you against anything, but you will be monitored just for the purpose of, let's say you are not sure what you're doing, because naturally this is a new thing for you. You may not have had any teaching experience at all. So your coordinator, who's someone who's more experienced with teaching a child and also the curriculum, will be able to give you some pointers for future classes. So that's the reason why we monitor your lessons, apart from the child safety aspect that we brought up earlier.
Also for a question for volunteer tutors as well, would their, you know, like a session be monitored or be observed by anyone?
So there will be people, so the other person in your WhatsApp group will be your coordinator. If there needs to be someone else added or anyone else wants to know how things are going, so we may have the teacher, the teacher of the child be in the group if they want to, but that's an option for them. But let's say someone else wants to observe your class, let's say it's another person from my readers who wants to do that, we will ask you first if you're comfortable with that. But apart from that, it's that volunteer tutor, parent, student. Sorry, Jane, was there another question tied together with that one?
No. Then I guess one more question would also be like, what if there's an emergency and I have to reschedule my session? How can volunteer tutors go about it?
So we'll talk about this a little bit more with your coordinator as well. Naturally, you will not be able to estimate if you have an emergency, if something happens, you need to take that time off. So you inform your coordinator as soon as you know. So if you know that that week is not a good week for you, but if emergencies happen, just alert them as soon as you know. If it's just one of you that's missing from class that day, your coordinator may just replace you in the class, so they will probably take your class and teach it for you. But if rescheduling is okay, meaning both you and the student are agreeable to moving your class to a time that's better suits you, that may be something that happens as well. But ultimately, this is something that will be handled by your coordinator.
Okay, so we also, is there any other way that a person can support if they cannot volunteer?
Yeah, definitely. So please share this volunteering opportunity with your friends, with your family, who, especially people who you know are great fit for this. I've seen so in the form, I'm looking at all the responses as they come in, and I see lots of friends and family of Petronas staff, and I'm guessing like that recommendation was made because they thought of this person and thought, I think you're a good fit for this program. This program really is for you. And so, yeah, please go ahead and support us by sharing it with other people. So we're still looking for more volunteers for the phase 2 of our program. So we've broken the 2,000 students into 2 batches. So the first one, most likely starting first week of March. Second one, most likely starting first week of April. So please share this with people you think will be a great fit.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Also, before we end the session, I guess it would be good to also talk about some of the typical challenges that these volunteer tutors might experience, and also, you've been a volunteer tutor before. What are some tips that you can share to, for a person to be a good volunteer tutor, or to make the experience as fun and smooth as possible?
So common challenges will be building that relationship at that start. Sometimes you can't see the face of your student, they can't see your face, you're interacting with them through voice note. So that may be something that takes time, but it's okay. A lot of volunteers go through that as well. The second one being needing some time to adjust yourself to the classes because it's new to you. So you might need time. So we definitely recommend you preparing for classes in advance. Just go through all your materials, be really clear about what you're doing that day, download them in advance. Otherwise you might panic when your classes is happening. Some people are really comfortable using 2 screens, so WhatsApp web and their phone. So find something that's comfortable for you because this is new for you as well. The other thing that I would think of is not being able to know your students' exact level. So at the start, you may use we do encourage, you will provide you with a rough guess of like the kind of approach you should use. So if your student is really unable to read at all, just use voice notes. So that's what we would recommend, but it may be tough for you to find the exact approach. So that could take some time. The good news is that there are other volunteers who would give you like advice and give you suggestions of what to try. The other thing about knowing your students' level is we do encourage you to speak in the child's native language if you find that they're really not responsive when you speak to them in English, because there might be a language barrier. They don't understand the words you are saying. That yes, you didn't type, you used voice note, but if there's no response, it could be that they don't understand you. So use the native language and then translate key terms so that over time they understand these English words that you are using with them. Those are some high level tips for you, but during the volunteer tutor training, you will learn so much more than what I can tell you today. There are common challenges outlined with how to overcome them as well in the resource pack. So that will be really helpful for you.
Thanks, Rachel. We've got one question from Mirza. She's asking, to celebrate the students' progress, are we allowed to send any gifts to them?
That is a really interesting one. I think you will not be allowed to send them directly. So everything go through the program coordinator. Please ask for their consent and we will align on this. So logistics wise, something may be able to be worked out, but don't directly contact your student for this. Ask your coordinator first.
Okay, I guess one last question would be, if anyone has any other questions related to volunteering with BOLD program, who can they talk to?
Thank you. If you have any other questions about the BOLD volunteering program, you can email us at volunteer@petronas.com.my. Let's see. Yes, if you have any other questions that we didn't cover today, yeah, please email us at volunteer@petronas.com.my. Can somebody drop that in the chat as well?
Okay, and also lastly, you know, like I'm super pumped and I want to sign up as a volunteer tutor, right? How would I know if, you know, my application was successful?
You would know if once we send you a confirmation email. So we're sending out the first batch of confirmations soon, probably next week. If you are unsuccessful, you can also expect to hear from us. And if you're put on a waiting list instead, you will also hear from us. Definitely by the end of January, you would hear either one of these. So if you're unsuccessful, if you're successful, or if you're on a waiting list.
Thanks, Rachel. And what if the person is unsuccessful and they want to try again?
That's a good question. So how we screen volunteers is with very fixed criteria, and I can show them to you. Unfortunately, it looks like if you're unsuccessful, the likelihood of you being successful the second time you volunteer, the second time you apply is quite unlikely. So if you're put on a waiting list, on the other hand, but after the 14 weeks, a slot might most likely open up to you, because we need a new batch of volunteers, and the ones who volunteered before or had been selected before now need to be replaced, right? But like some non-negotiables in the requirements to be a volunteer tutor is proficiency in English, good proficiency in English, an ability to communicate in another language. So BM being one if you don't have a third language to list. So we also talking about dialects here. We have selected students from Sarawak, Kelantan. So if you speak a local dialect, do indicate that in the form. It will help us understand which students you're best paired with. So the other one that I mentioned as a non-negotiable is the ability to commit to 14 consecutive weeks. So that one, unfortunately, it's not negotiable. Someone who's patient and able to work with children, if you tell us, of course, don't tell us something that's untrue. But if you know that you're not patient with children, I definitely discourage you from joining, because it might be really stressful for the child if you are unable to be patient with them. Then you also will need to have completed our volunteer tutor training. That's of course after you're confirmed, but the non-negotiable is no criminal record. If you do have a criminal record, especially pertaining to the safety of children, we will not be able to accept you. And apart from that, even though you confirm these things in the form, we will be running a background check on successful volunteers for the safety of the children. You have to have a digital device, because that's how you will be running the classes. But if you're not familiar with WhatsApp and Google Drive, you can very easily learn that that is not a non-negotiable. It is stated in the form, but it's not a non-negotiable. Familiarity with Google Drive and WhatsApp.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Okay, just one last question that came in from Faradilla. She's asking if there's any training for the unsuccessful applicant.
Unfortunately not. Yeah.
Okay, so seems like we don't have any more new questions from the crowd. So if anyone has any more questions, please email us at volunteer@petronas.com.my.
Passing the time back to Yushan to wrap us up for the day.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Jayan, for leading this session. I think it was a very informative session, and thanks everyone for your questions. It really helped kind of shed the light on the program and what to expect moving forward. So we are 6 minutes past 9. Thank you so much for your time. I really do hope that everyone's fired up to volunteer for both, and that the explanation about the type of support that we will be providing each volunteer is sufficient to calm your nerves and give you the assurance that you can contribute as a volunteer. So to end the session, I think we'd just like to make 2 very simple requests on behalf of the whole team. First, if you have not signed up, please do so. I think the link to the application form is in the chat. If it's not, we will throw it in right after this. And second, I think as Rachel mentioned a couple of times as well, please do help us kind of spread the word to your friends and family or anyone specifically who you think would be interested to volunteer in the program. And with that, I think thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to working together with all of you to bridge the learning divide. Thank you very much and good night.